That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Let's go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the UnFuckIt discussion. And I got a bunch of topics I want to throw on the table because there were two really good articles. It was a really good recording, which I put out. I found the article and put it out, I think, on Monday. And then there was a really good study that came out. And yeah, we're going to discuss that. But first, I want to talk about the sun. So, darlings, in case you hadn't noticed, our sun has gone from dead to very, very lively. Very, very lively. And it's so funny because I think it was just the last show that I was talking about the fact that, like, I just don't track this stuff anymore. Where I used to watch the sun every day. I used to watch the Schumann resonance every day. I used to watch CERN every day. I used to do all this stuff. So, like, I haven't really checked on the sun, solar stuff in a couple of weeks anyway. And lo and behold, started 48 hours ago, we started getting some major M-class flares. We had, up till yesterday at 5 p.m., we'd had 9 M-class flares in the previous 24 hours. And then I always watch, obviously, once that started happening, I had it live, and I've still got it up live on my screen right now to watch. And then everything died off, really, really, really low activity for about 14 hours. And I looked at it, and I analyzed a lot of the magnetic stuff that I was looking at and the measurements. And I was going, no, it's done now. I'm pretty sure it's done. We might see another 1 or 2 M-class flares, but it's done. And I was fucking wrong. It's been a long time since I've been wrong when it comes to the solar shit, and I was really fucking wrong. We had another M-class flare early morning this morning, and then between 8 o'clock this morning and 12 noon UTC, we had 2 X-class flares. We had an X 2.3, and we had an X 9.3. Now, we haven't had an X-class flare since May of 2015. And we haven't had an X-class flare up in the 9s since 2006. And we're at solar minimum right now. So really, really interesting. So, like I said, shit didn't play out the way I thought it would, which is kind of interesting. It made me go, oh, what's this? What are you showing me, hon? I can't see what you're saying. John, what are you showing me? I can't read that.
It's Solar Watch, and this is a forecast.
Yeah.
Solar 99% today, 50% tomorrow.
Well, this is just it. So we were supposed, the first spat of M-class flares that went through, we were supposed to get, there was a CME launched. It was directly Earth-facing. It was supposed to hit today. Now, we're already 11 o'clock at night my time. So we're 5 p.m. Eastern. Still no sign of it. Hold on, I'm just going to pull it up again. Where's my solar ham? There's solar ham. Yeah, we've got no raise in the KP index, nothing. It's sitting pure freaking green. The geomagnetic field is completely quiet. They are calling that between today and tomorrow, we're supposed to go up to a G3, which is a 7 on the KP index, which is a pretty strong geomagnetic storm. Hasn't hit yet. Not even a tickle of it so far. The 1 X-class flare, hold on, just give me 1 second. They finally loaded up an image of it. That was kind of nice. Finally, it's only taken them 9 freaking hours to load up the images of it. So the X 9.3 peaked at 12:02 UTC. Radio 2 emissions, which is normal. 1,969 kilometers per second was recorded with a CME, likely directed our way. More to follow once Earth's LASCO iconography images become available, blah, 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 blah. So that means there's a double CME coming because the one that was the 2.2 and the 9.3 both had CMEs attached. How fast it gets here, we don't know. Pretty much call it this weekend, though. if it's Earth facing. And I can't see how it can't be Earth facing. I'm pretty fucking sure it's got to be directly Earth facing. So, yeah. What this means, in clear and simple English, for those who don't speak solar science, geomagnetic storms directly affect us. Physically, mentally, emotionally. We know this. This is scientific fact. Okay? Scientific fact, road rage goes off the scale when there's geomagnetic storms happening. There's more suicides, there's more violence, etc., etc. So, keeping that, just the physical ramifications of it in mind, try to be aware. Be aware of the fact that we have got some major, mega solar influences right now. So just like before you flare up and tear someone a new asshole, maybe take a deep breath and ask yourself just how angry you actually are versus how angry you feel you are. Just saying. So yeah, that was really, really interesting. The reason I find it interesting is we know the mainstream media does these cycles where they do the whole propaganda, like, oh, and the kill shot. And they always talk about the Carrington event, which is a major solar event that happened in the late 1800s. It wiped out power grids, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so they like to play that song and dance. Usually they play that song and dance especially during solar maximums. And we are now in a solar minimum. And it's been as for a solar minimum, it's been really quiet, solar minimum. And they started up again about 2.5 months ago, playing the, we could be at risk for an EMP blast from a solar flare, blah, 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 blah. The mainstream media playing that up. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, the sun is dormant at the moment. It's so quiet. The CMEs that we've had have been relatively minor. The glancing blows, we've had a couple of bigger ones, but they've all been from filament eruptions, etc. There haven't been anything astounding, anything in the range that we would even remotely worry about, technology being fried. And then this happens, and I was kind of like, oh, it's September. And all this shit they've been talking about September, and we got Hurricane Harvey, is just left, and now it's Irma, and then there's, what is it, Jose, something with a J, 4 letters, another hurricane coming behind Irma. Mass flooding all over the place, like all over the planet. There's freaking floods everywhere and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I don't know, guys. It just strikes me as, predictive programming or something they knew was going to happen for some reason. I don't know. Just saying. Be aware. Your Wi-Fi may not work so well this weekend. Your GPS may be a little wonky this weekend. You may have issues getting cell signals, etc., etc. But if that's the geomagnetics go the way they should, or the way they're forecasting them to because of these CMEs, yeah, it could be a little funny. I mean, if you're really, really nervous, go buy some cinder blocks and build a little Faraday cage that you can store all your electronics underneath solid concrete, and they'll be fine. Just if you really, really want to be excruciatingly afraid of what could happen. So, the articles. So the first one I want to bring up, because it kind of leads very nicely into the second one, is one that's made me change my language now, because I keep talking about beliefs, keep saying beliefs. And of course, you have like this, people hear the word belief, their brain automatically goes to religion. They don't see belief as something that can be political beliefs, or fucking beliefs about science even can be all about beliefs, right? So this article, and hold on, I'm going to pull it up here. Give me a moment. Here we go. Okay, so now I got to find Zoom again. Okay, so here is the article. The article is, turns out that our biases really are stronger than our ability to perceive facts. So as soon as I read this, I was like, right, changing my word. It's no longer, I'm not going to talk beliefs. let's insert the word biases. Take out belief, put in the word bias, right? So this was a study, and this is a carry-on of several studies that have happened, where they've talked about basically new research has found out that humans have an excellent ability to ignore facts that don't fit with our own biases. Not just on Facebook where the stakes are pretty low, but even when it can cost us money. So they go through these studies, and there's a couple of studies that they did, where they tested people on how they would react, and it was all about basically feeding them facts, but presetting them with biases, so to speak, especially monetary, like point structures and et cetera. And they discovered that, yeah, lo and behold, once the people developed a bias towards a certain symbol or a certain specific topic, they would stick with that even when they realized that the other choice was, in fact, of higher value, if you will. Really, really interesting. So get down here. This is the part that got me. It says, this could be why some people won't change their minds even when the evidence is staring them in the face. It's as if you don't hear the voices in your head telling you that you're wrong, even if you're going to lose money. Which is really, really, because this is a topic of conversation we've been talking about for years now, right? There's still hope. If you work hard at it, you can try and reduce the effect of your biases. A 2012 study into implicit bias found that by being aware of your bias and caring about its actual effects are powerful tools to fight against it. Working hard is the key, though. In 2015, researchers published findings that almost everyone is blind to their own biases. So this is not easy to overcome. Complete objectivity is probably something we will never fully achieve, which I totally disagree with. It's not something we'll not achieve, because I think a lot of people have gotten pretty freaking close to it. So here you go. Something we have been talking about for years, about how people, you can present them the facts. Here's your vaccine facts. Here it is in black and white studies. And it's like we say, we talk about the fluoride stare, or they glaze over all of a sudden. It's like, and they can't accept it. Even when you lay incontrovertible facts right in front of them, they cannot accept it. So here we are, we're talking about biases. When you have a bias, and it doesn't matter. Now, these biases weren't beliefs, or what you would consider beliefs, i.e. they weren't nothing about religion. It was biases towards symbols, money, very mundane, everyday fucking things. The question is, how many of these people could even identify the fact that they had a bias to begin with, right? Isn't that the hardest thing? To try and convince someone, to try and get someone to see that how they're reacting to a subject is biased, that they have a bias, or a belief structure, but a bias that is, well, is it walk time? It's walk time. It's walkie time. Okay. That they have a bias on the subject, and therefore it doesn't matter what evidence you're placing in front of them, they're refusing to see it because of their own bias. So that was really, really good. I find this really, really enlightening. I haven't had a chance, but I'm actually going to go and look up the actual studies mentioned and read through the studies themselves, because I'd like to get a little bit more information on what they used as the control factors beyond just what's in this article. Now, the other article was this one. I've got to get rid of the chat. You guys are distracting me. By Andrew Martin. It was a great article that he wrote, and he did a video called Stop Being Spiritual. And there was a couple of things that he said during this that were awesome. Awesome. And one of the things that he said in this video was basically everyone's climbing to the top of the mountain to meet with the guru. to get all this knowledge. But if you don't bring the knowledge back down off the mountain, then what good was it? The idea being that we've got to stop focusing on all this stuff and take the lessons that we've learned and actually apply them in our life. Apply them within this now and what we are doing in the now, not keep continuously living in this woo-woo land, I guess. Brilliant video. It's 20 minutes. And I love the fact that Andrew was able to, in 20 minutes, say succinctly what I've been trying to say for 2 months in 2-hour videos. And still, I don't know that I've completely managed it. So it was really, really awesome. Ben, I know that you really wanted to talk about this because you were like, oh, we got to talk about this one. You're muted though.
That video was fucking... Not now, I'm not. That video was off the hook. He's so bang on it. He's so bang on it. It's hilarious. But yeah, it's like you say, it's bias versus fact, right?
Bias versus fact. And all that bias / belief.
Well, but then they're one and the same, right?
Exactly.
Because a bias is made up of a one-pointed view, and so is a belief. Because otherwise, and knowing is weighed up with facts, and facts aren't something that are necessarily presented to you. E.g., 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
Because then that, like within that connotation of mathematics, 1 + 1 = 2. Is only to do with that numerical thing. Because you'll get kids that go, watch 1 + 1, and you'll go 2, and they'll go, no, it's a window.
It's a window.
You know, where you write it, and you go 1 + 1, and then the equals is a window.
Yeah.
Or in the Anastasia books, like if anyone read to the end of them, it's like Maigret takes his son a calculator and a wood truck or something along those lines, and then the kid's like, Papa, what's the calculator? And he's like, it's for doing maths. It's like, Papa, what is this maths you speak of? And he's like, well, 1 + 1 = 2. And the kid goes, but that's wrong, Papa. And of course, Dad's like, it's not wrong, it's not wrong. And then Anastasia steps in and goes, hold up, hear the kid out. And he goes, but Papa, you have one mummy and one daddy, and then you have one child, which is 3. He says, you have one tree, and you add nothing into it, and you can have 1,000 trees. And then Maigret's like, oh, shit, I just got schooled by a 5-year-old. So it's all perspective. So the facts, what facts actually are the things that present themselves and then fit the situation. Not suit it, not made to suit, but actually fit the situation.
Fit the situation.
Because a fact is something that's presented that, and then of course, once again, as we've spoken about, we're all got individual perspectives, right? So what old mate was saying was oneness, or that attainment that everyone's trying to get through ascension, that oneness, you're already in oneness.
Yeah.
Right? That's where, divinity, and that's what I just put into the chat. And Tool have got a song, and in it, there's the chorus where he says, basically, we've been gifted this moment to be divine and human. And that's what I've always seen the scales as being. You have divinity and you have humanity. And humanity, or whatever you want to call it, you can sit there and say human is monster and legalese, but I could beg to differ if you read the actual definitions. But the human side of it has been given free will. Divinity is. So free will is the individual perspective. So it's what free will does with divinity here. So the world, or the earth, the universe presents facts, and it's not always in what we can see, smell, touch, taste, and hear. Right?
Yeah.
Like I started thinking about
because your perspective, if you're blind, is going to be different than your perspective if you can see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people will call into something intuition, right? There's this thing that people define as intuition. Some people call it their gut instinct or whatever. Now, just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not a physical attribute presenting itself, right? It's like you eat and you think that you're full, but what it is all your bacteria in your body are getting what they need, so they're chilling the fuck out. That's why, you know, refined sugars and stuff are made the way they are, because they actually replicate cocaine and things like that in the body. So your body goes, ah. But you can go to that oneness and attainment, but if you don't bring it back down, what is the point of it?
Walking your walk.
What is the point?
Walking your walk.
Well, if you want your world view, your world view to transpire, manifest, you've got to bring that stuff that you've attained from higher back down here, because you can go and sit there and it's already in the higher. It's already there. Empathy. That's what I was getting at. Sorry. It's like people call, people go, I'm empathic. And I apologize in advance if this offends anyone. But what empathy is something that everyone has. That is intuition.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel more than anyone else. You just might be more aware of that attribute that the universe presents.
Yeah.
And therefore, that's what intuition, gut instinct, those things there are all the same. Empathy is that.
Yeah.
Right? That is what empathy, and I think I was saying a few weeks ago, it's like we come here with compassion. It's the one thing that we come here with.
Yeah.
And it gets bred out of us. But that compassion is that empathy. It is the intuition. It is those things. It's just how you look at them. And then, of course, that's where what I found with that talk that he did was the way he dialogued, he split it all up. So spirituality, and what I got from what he was talking about, is that oneness. He said it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's bringing... But you're not spiritual here. You're not just spiritual here. You're something else here as well. And it's bringing that spiritual aspect into that human aspect, finding the balance with, like I say, compassion. And that's where manifestation and the journey starts playing out, because you're in tune or harmony, right?
But you have to use it. You have to use it, and not just use it like in writing an article or a Facebook post, but you have to use it in your daily life. Like how do you interact with people? How do you speak with people? It's like we have good days and we have bad days, and you have days where you go out and you're surrounded by people who are just assholes. And do you feed into it, or do you have the ability to go beyond it and say, okay, I can feel that this person's had like a really freaking bad day. And if I just snap back at them, you're just feeding it. You're just feeding his bad day. It's not compassion. And it's not using your empathy, right? We have to use it in our daily life. Okay, I'm gonna drop a bomb here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drop a bomb. This came to me. I actually woke up with this Sunday morning, and I was going to get into it on the show on Sunday, and I completely got off track with other stuff. And I literally, because I have the background to understand this, and I know quite a few of you will too, the New Age movement, and not just the New Age, not just the religious New Age, the aware, even though to the point of the conspiracy theorists, however you wanted, the people who are aware of all this shit that's going on whatever level that is, are becoming like a group of Jehovah's Witnesses. No, and I'm absolutely dead serious. It's like, well, I can't associate with all those people. I just can't associate with those people. I can't talk to them. I have nothing in common with them. And all of a sudden I'm watching, and it came to me, like I said, I woke up Sunday morning with this huge thing of like division, like the ultimate division of separation of them versus us is we create this bubble around ourselves. And we want to create, I'm sorry, but we want to create Unfuckers Island, and I get it. I get that we want to create Unfuckers Island because you want to have the place that's comfortable, where you can just go and you can just be yourself and not have to interact with, and let's look at the fuckery on the levels. The levels of fuckery, like government fuckery, police fuckery, border fuckery, right? Financial, banking fuckery. You just don't want to deal with it anymore. But at the same time, there's an isolationist piece in there of like, well, wait, if we're all the ones who know, who are aware of all this shit, and then we go off and isolate ourselves, then how do we help the rest of the people? How do we take what we got from the top of the mountain and bring it down and actually use it in our daily life? How are we using what we've gotten if we isolate ourselves into little tight pockets where we're not sharing our knowledge? Or if we are, we're sharing it only within our little pockets of where we feel comfortable.
Then we are where we are right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With groups of people with certain knowledges.
Yep.
That have created their own little groups within the groups.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then offshoots off of that, and government. And that was one thing that I was cracking up about. And I had, like, what you've just been speaking about is that division side of it. It's like, look, if everyone stepped back and had a look at what's going on right now and tried to assess what was going on right now, you have groups of, and like if we break it down into, not that it is black and white, but into that kind of context, it's like you have humans fighting against something for something, right? That's what it is. Doesn't matter whether it's CSG or Black Lives Matter or the fucking KKK or Save the Whales or fuck any of it. If you look at the common denominators, you have humans fighting for something against something.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that I've sort of looked at is what they're fighting for are rights.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is, right?
Yeah.
That they're fighting for rights. Which
that's the premise.
Yeah. To fight for rights are a particular thing and come from a particular source, right? That particular source that those rights come from would be the thing that the humans are against. But they're putting themselves into all these divisions rather than going, humans' lives matter on all fronts, and actually pinpointing the thing that they're fighting against. That's not what's happening. So then it comes back to this whole fact thing, right?
Yep.
And convoluting it with, I can't talk to that group and I can't talk to this, da. So it comes back to dialogue, comes back to communication.
That's his applause. He's just applauding you. That's all.
He's massive.
This conversation reminds me of the book Animal Farm. Remember?
Oh God, I haven't read that since I was about 14.
I know, but it's true, you know.
But that's the whole thing. Like when you start presenting the facts, like I started thinking about this thing the other day, Dee, and I was like, okay, we got levity, right?
Yeah.
Now, if levity's a thing, there's got to be an equation for it. What would the equation be? So I was like, okay, well, what's the equation for gravity? Because technically levity would be gravity in reverse, right? Because it equals it out. Okay?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So I start looking and I'm like, oh, there's not really a
An
an
equation for gravity?
for gravity, but there is an equation for force, right? And the gravity is that force between two masses, okay? So the first equation is F equals G in brackets M1 M2 / R squared, which is basically mass 1 and mass 2, and the force between those two masses is gravity, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold on. So gravity doesn't exist without mass. It's like, well, what's mass?
And
Is
what
there
is
an
mass? Because that's
So
another
is there an equation for mass? So I look into this and I'm like, no. But there's the Newtonian law 1 of physics and then the Newtonian law 2 of physics. Okay? I'm like, okay, well, I'll look into this law 2. And basically law 2 states that if something's moving this way, physics states that there's an equal and opposite force.
reaction,
So if
yep.
the force is the same, guess what? Nothing moves.
No.
That's number one. But I go back to the gravity thing. Gravity doesn't exist without mass. So what the fuck makes mass?
Energy.
So now I'm left in a field where levity is quite possibly the thing that creates mass, that's outside of the field, that then allows the mass to create gravity. Yes, and someone just said, we make gravity. We are gravity.
Yeah.
We are technically gravity. So,
Okay, say that again. Ben, say it again.
well, you can't have gravity without mass.
Right.
Right. And mass is an amount of atoms condensed.
Condensed. It's energy,
But
basically.
But what's doing that?
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at. So to have gravity, you have to have something that creates mass. So the entire physics, Newtonian physics, is actually created within something that something else creates that they don't tell us about. So then I go back to what is anti-gravity.
Oh, man.
There is but there is no equation for anti in science. It is merely a line.
Yeah.
It is merely a line. So all anti-gravity is saying that there's no gravity, but we can't explain it. That's literally what anti-gravity means.
Yeah.
So then we're left with a field that for, I don't know, let's say 200 years, that they have been using a line to represent and never ever gone into and never ever tried to study and never ever tried to explain it. But what's being presented now is when you go through Newtonian theory, to actually get it, you have to have this other thing that creates everything for that to be based on. And they use anti as it.
Which is unexplainable and undefinable, and it's just...
You have nothing for it.
Right. But then...
And the reason...
Gravity and mass are both things that are theories. It's a theory, and it's an accepted theory, but it is still a theory. It's unproven. They can't prove what it is, hence the fact that there is no equation that is the equation that defines gravity or defines these things. So you create an entire body of science in which all science is based upon.
And then you have to keep creating... So remember what we said. It's like you have Newtonian theory. It was gravity. It was that, the cause... Well, it wasn't even really cause and effect. It just was like an apple fell. But as we've stated in our briefs for levity, it's like, so Newton proved that an apple falling had gravity, but how did the apple get up the tree? Because if that was the case and that things go up must come down, then the moon is falling. And that's an equation that science should really be looking at because, da-da-da-da-da. Now, I get that there are other forces there, but they don't explain those things.
No.
So Newtonian theory needs another theory to prove it, which is then you have an Einstein that comes along and has the theory of relativity that holds at steadfast for Newtonian theory. Then Einstein fucks off and or not so much, but then he has to come up with the theory of relativity. And then to prove the theory of relativity, they've had to create quantum physics. And quantum physics deals in the realm of decimals. So, what is it? 10th and 11th dimensions. Or that's what they say. However, they're just 10th and 11th decimal places.
Decimal places. Oh. And
so there is
unexplainable and undefinable.
You know, and depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you that Einstein was fucking full of shit. He wasn't even a scientist. His wife was a mathematician, and he like basically just got high and started telling all the, wouldn't it be cool if this was da 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 da? And she was writing mathematical equations for him for this la la world that he was talking about. Yep. And that's where the theory of relativity comes from. His wife, the mathematician.
Yep.
Not Einstein.
Well, it's funny because Nick just sat there. He read a study out today because Nick is always going through all the stuff. And it's another study that came out that basically was they spent bajillions of dollars on to try and prove some sort of quantum aspect of something that is definably unprovable because it's all a theory built on a theory on a theory. And we sat there and we were like, why is it that science spends ludicrous amounts of money to come up with theories that explain nothing that is going to help anyone, anywhere, at any time in the future? Like nothing. Like not all these things that we read about. So things like think of all the studies that I've brought up and I've brought forward. Things like the crystals and now we've got quantum spin crystals and we've got small. And the reality of it is they just spent millions of dollars to learn why. And in what way does that better us? Does it better our lives? Does it do anything to define anything about our... Nothing. Zippo. Like, nothing. Where is the basics? And like Nick was going to... Nick, I can't remember the questions. You would have had a giggle, though, because he started firing off questions of like, why aren't they doing a study to figure out what this is? Why aren't they doing a study to find out what that is? But no, they're going to spend $1 bajillion to go find out why some quantum spin crystal turned left instead of right. And who the fuck cares? Right? Really? Who the fuck cares? Yeah, well, I'm not going to say you're wrong, Tom. Max Planck did kind of open a bucket of worms with that one. Anyways, getting back to what we were talking about, we went way off to the side. So go back to levity. Go back, just get back into the levity again, because that's where we were.
But not way off topic, because see, with this is a new understanding. Let's say that this was the new schooling theorem. It gives us a whole different platform to comprehend everything, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you remember when all the fake news thing sort of started, whenever it was, like I know that fake news has been fake news for ages, but the actual fake news kind of storyline. And everyone was like, oh, there's all this fucking bad stuff going on. And it was like, hang on, it's false flag, false flag, false flag, false flag, false flag, false flag. They're all productions. You know? I think I said the other week when we spoke, I spoke to my actor friend. Fucking X Factor, fucking America, Britain, Australia's Got Talent, The Block, you know, Master Chef. They're all actors. It's all scripted.
Yeah.
So if you put those things together, and that's your new basis for looking at what's in front of you, things start changing. You start seeing things differently. You start dialoguing differently. It's not all bad. It's just that liquefaction happening. You know, you get that damp sand and you start shaking it, and all the clarity comes to the top, all the water comes to the top.
Yeah.
And I think if we start utilizing that as the platform from where we sort of dialogue and speak from, the issues aren't this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue. You actually will find that there is one issue, and there is one group of peoples trying to achieve something. And that changes everything.
Yeah.
Because like what that video was saying, and what we are talking about is it's not, I can't talk to those people and those people believe this, so I can't be near them. It's looking at it objectively as opposed to subjectively, and realizing that we're here on this journey of learning stuff and implementing the stuff we learn. And when that is the way of existing, or harmony, what I call it, things change. It's not all bad at all.
No, exactly.
And what Matt was saying is like the whole now thing. When is now? When does tomorrow ever come? You know, and you think about it like that, and it's like, oh, how the fuck can I be in the now? Now. Every day you're a new person, because the stuff you learned the day before changes you. Whether you're aware of that change or not, it has. There have been things in your day that have literally chemically changed you.
Yeah.
And then it's becoming aware of those things, the intuition, the empathy, and integrating that once you come back down the mountain.
Yep. But you have to come back down the mountain first.
That's right. That's right.
That was
And
so
realizing that it is a walk up and down a mountain.
Yeah. Even almost daily. Right? Sometimes it's almost daily, right? Like you walk up the mountain to go look for something, and then you come back.
Sometimes it's hourly.
Yep. Yeah, Tom said it at the exact same time you did.
What do you mean with walking up and down the mountain?
Using the mountain as the analogy of, like, you know, the guru sits on the top of the mountain and you go up looking for answers for the life's greatest questions, for guidance, for what you call spiritual knowledge. So we're using it as an analogy. You're walking up the mountain looking for this spiritual enlightenment, looking for this knowledge.
The New Age call it the ascension.
Yeah, their ascension, yeah.
But the other thing that he made quite clear, which was the warrior's path.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think needs to be defined is we're all on the warrior's path. So the struggles are needed because they are, it seems to me that because when good stuff starts happening, you're so in the flow, it feels so natural and normal and everything's going right because that's the harmony, right?
Yeah.
The bad shit creeps in when you haven't learned, when you start getting complacent. And that's what locks it in. So if you don't let it lock in and learn the lesson the first time from the soft approach,
it gets worse.
It will slap you.
Yep.
And it will slap you and slap you and slap you because that is how it gets set in.
And that's, we've talked about this for ages now, the fact of, like, if you're presented with an issue, whether it's your own personal issue, whether it's your own personal bias, whether it's a belief structure, whether it's, I don't know, a personality flaw, doesn't matter. It comes up and it shows itself. And then how do you deal with it? Do you ignore it? Do you deal with it? And if you ignore it, the next time it shows up, it's bigger. And the next time is bigger. And the next time is bigger. Because it's going to keep showing up and each time getting bigger and bigger until you finally deal with it. On whatever level it has to be dealt with, but until you finally deal with it, it's like that lesson becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And yeah.
Well, that's where your new tools get created, right? It's like if you believe in the evolution, Darwinian evolution theory, it's basically like monkey crawled down from the tree and then was like, you know, I fucking need to stand up a bit more. So he found a stick. Then the stick wasn't big enough, so he needed to get a tree. He tried whacking his hand, he tried whacking the stick, and then he got a stone. And then, you know, he adapted his tools as things got harder, or as the hard thing presented themselves, the tool was created for the job. And that's what the hero's journey or the warrior's path is about.
Well, it's interesting because the warrior, so when we look at that statement was the warrior and the warrior's journey, people tend to think warrior, you think of a specific type. You think of in your face, it's like you're going to fight, you're a fighter, etc. But if you look at the mechanism of military, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about Roman times or you're talking modern military, the warriors, the fighters, are not the only warriors. You have the people who do all the statistics. You have the people who run the numbers, who gather all the information, gather all the intel. You have the people who look after the medics, that look after the various people. You have people who, and they're all warriors, i.e. they're all part of that military might, that one cohesive unit, but they have different jobs, but they're all warriors, right? So it's very interesting because when we look at it, we had this conversation, Ann and I think it was last week, and we talked about the fact that we don't all have necessarily the same job, i.e. there are some who are the absolute, as you would, the stereotypical warriors who go out there and they will get on the streets and they will do protesting and they will be vocal and they will be up there on the front lines fighting, so to speak. You also have the ones in the background who, they're the researchers. They're the ones who feed the warriors the information they need in order to go forward. And you have the carers, like you have the people who are there supporting from a more, I'm going to say peaceful, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Caring for people who look after their health, who are there to help them in that area of the journey so that they can go forward. But it's all the same coherent unit. All these people are all working within the same unit. They just make different focuses.
Parts of it. Well, see, like poker is a perfect kind of representation, because if you put poker into it, it's like you know when to hold, you know when to, you know. This is the thing. Warrior is not the fucking spear-toting, gung-ho, fucking run in there and do things stupid. A warrior is articulate. A warrior is not a worrier.
Yeah.
You know, it's intuitive.
Yeah.
And a warrior knows when to be scared. Like a warrior is not someone that doesn't have fear. Or is scared. I shouldn't, you know, I'll differentiate. Scared. Yeah. They know when to pick the battles. They know, like, that's the whole thing. A warrior is, you know, and warrior is not, once again, I've got to make sure that, like, when I use my words, they're not bipolar. So it's like with masculine, feminine, you know, you have female and male. And from those two standpoints, you have the LGBTY, blah, 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 blah. Then you've got masculine and feminine, right? They're attributes. They're not you. They're attributes, right? If you looked at it as a battery, they're the two diodes, positive and negative. Yep. But that's not evil and, like, bad and good.
No, exactly. Exactly.
And that's the thing, is like when you start looking at it, all these things as attributes, you start realizing what tools you've been given. And that's what here is about. It's not about altering the the vessel per se, and it's learning how to be divine and human.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the
It's
vessel
the
that you've
balance point.
got,
It's the
Yeah.
balance point. And it always comes back to the balance point. When you go to the extremisms, it's extremism. It doesn't
Yes,
matter which extreme side it is, it's still extremism. And the
well,
balance point
ism
is...
it.
Sorry, say again?
As soon as you ism something,
Yeah. As soon as it becomes an ism, you're in deep water all of a sudden. But, yeah, I mean, it comes back to, again, coming down the mountain and using that in the balance, in that in your daily life, et cetera, in moving forward and whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your daily life is. It doesn't matter whether you're a baker, whether you're a salesman, whether you're an IT technician, a mom, a teacher, a dog. It doesn't matter. You use those pieces. And there's a balance point. And you can't
see,
extreme.
once again, it's like if you bring it back again to the basics, like those things are still like being a baker, a gardener, an accountant. Those are things you do. Those are tools you have. They are not you.
They're not you.
So from that, and that's what I mean. It's like if you're earning money in any way, it's how you administer that finance as to how it's used.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well,
So
I always use the analogy, right? People like to blame money for everything. Money is evil. Yeah. No, it's what is done with money that's evil. It's like same thing. Guns aren't evil. It's the person holding the gun that defines what the role is. How the person uses the money that defines what that is.
Well, there's that side of it, but there's also the other part, which is, excuse me, that they're all tools. They're all tools, and all those tools, at some point, you're being told where to direct them. So if you earn money, you must pay the tax man. Well, must you? Like, what are the facts on this? You know, we've become that complacent that once a directive like you did, like the article you brought out in the start, we become complacent by our biases, and our biases we are given.
Yeah.
We don't learn them. That's what that article's getting at, is like biases are essentially implanted.
Yeah.
And then those biases
by a parent or a priest or a teacher or an uncle, or it doesn't matter. But yes, you're not born with them. You're not born with any bias.
You come here with nothing and everything all at the same time.
Yeah.
And then essentially the way that we are brought up or programmed and is generally from our parents' biases. So we become manifestations of our parents unless we look at what they were presenting as tools. Like, I grew up hating my parents, like, like very much so. And then something happened and I went, holy shit, they were just doing the best with what they could at that time. I was like, I'm not my parents. I'm me.
And
holy
they gave
shit.
you tools. They gave, and I said this, same thing. I get along very well with my dad and always have done. Have never gotten along very well with my mom. And yet, we talked about it on Sunday, where there's times where you open your mouth and your mother's words fall out of your lips, and you go, and as the words are coming out, you're like, holy shit, did I just fucking say that? I can't. But again, they've just given you that lesson. Because if you hadn't had that lesson, you may have said those same words, but you wouldn't have recognized the experience you had from the other side of those words of what that lesson taught you. Right?
And that's what I think having children is about.
But making them miserable? Making them miserable so that they know what to expect. Yeah, no.
Well, it's that slap in the face. It's like, remember the stuff you didn't like every time in your face. The minute that you raise your voice, it's like, oh shit. You know, it is the fucking like, and it's the fucking biggest reflection. It's the biggest reflection. But then you've also then got to realize it's like this is a being that doesn't need to be fucked with. So how can I guide it the best I can?
How can I guide?
Without influencing.
I know. It's every parent's worst nightmare. It's the worst. I do it all the time. You second guess yourself continuously. I'm like, oh, could I have handled that situation a little better? Did I just crush his little feelings and now he's, and you're like, oh, fuck, what did I do?
So for me, where we're at is literally, and we've been here for some time, but we really have to set a platform, like a new starting point, because we can't keep on reflecting on what's going on here and transpiring when we know we're being spoon-fed half-truths. We can't keep going back to Trump versus Putin versus China versus money versus fucking IMF versus pedophile versus when for starters we know that the science is only half of a coin, and we know that the media is a mockery, and that we know that the divisions are all fictions. Yep. All of them, every single fucking one.
Yep.
And therefore, like I say, so not everything's bad. And I think Randy and the lady that Randy does a show with, they were talking about this stuff as well. The divisions, the truthers, the da-da-da, I can't talk to them and yada, yada, yada. But when we're like, if we're all in these groups and we all know all this shit, but we keep going back into the paradigm, I guess, that's being presented as opposed to the facts that we know stand. And that there changes everything. It changes our entire dialogue, what we're talking about, where we're coming from, what we're wanting to achieve. And that's how, I guess, societies advance themselves. When you had your Platos and Galileos and da-da-da-da-da talking in the amphitheaters and the farmers were up the back and then they were like, holy shit, what did he just say? The Earth's not the center of the universe? Oh, fuck, I got to change my farming styles now. There's Venus? Oh, shit, I've got to fucking take that into consideration with my corn. But that's where we're at. This is where we're at. And I think we've really got to go, we've got to choose a point that we're going to go forward from, where we're taking this stance, not that stance. And that's not me trying to divide it, but what I'm saying is we have this manipulated system.
Yeah.
Like time. What the fuck is that?
Oh, don't.
No, I'm not going to, but you get what I'm saying. It's like,
no, I get it.
Things, it's like, okay, so this is the starting point. This is where we want to go from. And everyone's crying it out. The First Nations of America, the First Nations here in Australia, the First Nations everywhere on the planet. Like, let's look at our elder cultures, and I'll call them that because they're the closest ones connected to being fucked over. They still have country. And they're our elders. They're our spiritual, let's say, elders. So we need to start grounding that in and having their backs as much as that. Like, here they are fighting for water, for the children, and we're sort of going, fucking Putin, Trump, fucking IMF, pedophiles. And it's like, well, that's their world, right? Let's have these people's back, or our people's back. and have this like let's start this new dialogue from this new point of view, because that's where we're at. We're not over there. That's why that shit doesn't make sense. It's the distraction. It is the confusion. It is the content.
It is the distraction. And it's easy to get caught up in the distraction. Sometimes things just trigger you. You have that moment. I do it. The news goes by. I read a story and my head goes, are you fucking kidding me? And you have that moment where you slip into that distraction. And it's like North Korea is firing a nuclear weapon and it caused a 6.8 earthquake on their own people, blah, blah, blah. And I said on Sunday, like, we don't really know if it's true or not, because, you can't really, we don't have anyone over there to tell us what's going on. So basically it's all hearsay. And it's the same thing here. Oh, this is going on with Putin, and this is going on with, the U.S., and this is this. But it's just a divisionary distraction. What have we actually seen come out of all this stuff? Yeah, same thing. Like the media, if you look at the media and you say, okay, so you've got, in the last 5 years, we've had the U.S. against Russia, the U.S. against the Ukraine, the U.S. against Syria, the U.S. against North Korea, then it went back to Syria, then it was the Ukraine again, then it was Venezuela, then it was South Africa for a while, and then it was back to Syria, and then it was North Korea, and Syria, but really, what's come out of it?
Yemen and Ethiopia and da-da-da and da-da-da.
Exactly. But the thing is and every time it's like, oh, here comes World War III. Here comes World War III. Oh, this is it this time. And then you go, okay, well, wait. They've been doing this for fucking years. And World War III still hasn't happened.
And the fact of the matter is okay, so they keep talking about this. It's just like the First Nations. They've talked about the big waves.
Yeah.
They've talked about fucking, the sun doing its thing. They've talked about the quakes. They've talked about the fires. And yet we've still sat there complacently by and gone, oh, the government will take care of it, to the point now where we're going, is the government fucking doing this? Are they actually doing it? Like,
they'll take care of us. No, they're the fuckers that caused it in the first place.
And see, that was one of the funny things, is like going through the permaculture book. Bill Mollison always spoke about how at the teetering point, that's when the civil services would kick in. So regardless of who was in charge, the military would step in for the people, and the police would step in for the people, and da-da-da-da. But I don't know if Bill had things like MK Ultra and da-da-da-da-da fully in mind. Believe you me, he was there. He knew this shit existed. But to the point now where it's quite possibly, a fucking song comes on the radio and that sets 10 people off all over the world to fucking drive cars into markets somewhere, let's just say.
Yeah.
This is the stuff we're dealing with. So, and once again, it's like, we need to have a new starting point. We have to have this place where we can start talking about the stuff like the Nick's crystal batteries, like Nassim Harriman's is space / levity the most powerful thing that we should be looking at, and we only need to look at 1 cubic centimeter of it. So hey, doesn't take up a lot of room. And there's scientists out there doing that. Like there's a guy called I think it's Robert Murray Smith, and he does a lot of energy stuff. And he open sources a lot of his shit. Carl does work with him on graphitic carbons, and he's made luminescent photovoltaics out of shit like fucking PVA glue, and cooking it with caustic soda and stuff, and making these different polymers and shit. There's all this stuff out there, and it's not that hard.
Nope.
So and that's where we should plug John's new website.
Yep.
The Skillshare, which is absolutely bang on perfect for what we're talking about as well. Which is new platforms for us to actually, this is what I think that things like Bitcoin and the blockchain are actually presenting.
Oh,
like,
and
there are other.
there's a conversation going to come up very, very soon, and I don't think we're going to get into it tonight because I want to get a friend of mine, you guys all know Jeff. I want to bring him on because we're going to want to talk about blockchain, and we're going to talk about cryptocurrencies because there's some shit going on that's really, really interesting right now, and it goes down to, money is money, and we use it, and it's what you use it that defines it, not how. It's how you use it and what you use it for that defines it. It's a conversation we are going to have really, really fucking soon. Here, the conversations are coming out. I mean, this is the reason why I was really moved to create RTS Earth, is to start building a place together where we can start plugging pieces in to have these conversations and to share this knowledge out, right? And it's a work in progress. It's totally and completely a work in progress, and it's going to take us a while to get it to that stage where it's doing what we want it to do in the now moment, because you know what? The next day we may decide we want to make it do something else. But for the now moment, right? But the conversations are happening. So it's really, really funny because we have certain conversations that we don't talk about. And we all know, all of us have been in this situation where you just don't talk about certain subjects with people outside of like your unfuckers group, right? And it was awesome. I had another phenomenal week, a week of conversations again, where went to the beach on Tuesday for our regular homeschool meetup crew. And there was only one other family who came there, and this one friend of mine. Her and I haven't had a chance to sit and talk, just her and I, in probably a couple of months. And she sat down and she said to me, how do you do it? And and it started off as a homeschooling type thing, but it went into a lot of different stuff. And we ended up into a conversation talking about the stupidity of borders. Well, where are the borders? Why are there borders? And I actually sat down and was like, okay, well, if you want to get into this, I can explain some of this. And she was like, yeah, I actually would really like to know. And we got into it, and we started getting into things like I explained the straw man to her. I explained how the straw man works in 100 words or less, actually. It was like a very brief subnote in the conversation. And she was like, I had no idea. I never knew that. And I was like, most people don't. Most people don't comprehend this. I said, you've already seen the education system and the vaccine system. So you've already put those two pieces. Those are two pegs on the board that you've already seen. You've already seen how fucked up they are and how they're designed to fail us. Basically, they're not designed to help. They're designed to help fail. And I said, now when you expand that and you start looking at other things, you can start to see how they are all interlinked together. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about big pharma, big oil, big banks, it all interlinks together. And we had this amazing conversation. So this is a woman who's never thought about stuff, has no interest in politics, no interest in any of the kind of thing that is kind of our bread and butter for a lot of us. And we had this conversation. And the conversation maybe on those topics lasted 20 minutes. And she got it. You could see her because the conversation had been a very personal one to her and I, talking about how we're very similar in certain aspects of our personality, how we're kind of wandering people. We don't settle very easily. We're never settled. We never feel settled wherever we are. We're always ready to uproot and go to the next place, on to the next thing. And in the conversation we had, some of the pieces that I was able to give her really helped her to kind of help herself. And she kind of had a real moment of like, holy shit, like I actually kind of understand. She, at the end of it, she gave me a big hug and she was like, you know what, thank you so much. Because she says, you get to the point where you think you're crazy, you think you're broken, you think there's something wrong with you because all these other people want this box. And when you don't want that box, you feel like, oh, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why don't I want that box? I had another conversation today with another really, really good friends of ours and lovely couple, and just little things, and you start sharing the knowledge. And it doesn't have to be like did you know? This is what it is. Blah, blah, blah. It's just like it comes up in conversation. And instead of stopping myself from discussing these things, I actually was like, no, I am going to discuss these things. And I've started putting some of these pieces out there. So it's like, well, how is anyone going to learn these things until someone sits and discusses it? And you have to first find the common ground. And you find the common ground that you already have. So in this case, it was vaccines and homeschooling. That's our common ground. Yet, when you start discussing it, all of a sudden you realize you have more common ground. And when they start putting the pieces together, they realize they have more common ground and that things start making sense for them. But if we don't open ourselves up and have those conversations and those discussions, lay those seeds, and plant them, nothing is going to grow.
And you know, Danny, homeschool families are some of the best ones to,
Yep.
yeah, because they're homeschooling because they do see the, you know, the system, you know, and they don't approve of it. So they're already have an amount of, you know, being open-minded.
Yep.
And so they're often a great audience to reach. I got to homeschool one of my kids, so yeah. And
Well, this is it, but you know, it keeps coming back to, and I always use the gardening analogy, right? I always come back to that whole thing, and I say about the fact of, like, so instead of beliefs, we're going to say biases. Doesn't matter what someone's bias is. If you're building a community garden and the person weeding next to you is Muslim or Buddhist or a flat earther or New Age, Enlightenment, whatever, it doesn't matter because you have a common ground. The fact that you're both there weeding that garden means that you have a common ground and there's an opening there. Even if the first 3 conversations are nothing but talking about plants. Talking about, oh, and do you know that these dandelion weeds are actually really, really healthy for you? Yeah, I heard that. They're really, really good. What do you do with them? Oh, well, I do them like, you open the doors and they start the conversations. And when you make a connection with people on one thing, you can open the connection on other subjects.
Well, look at the things that people, like, whether they're Muslim or Buddhist or fucking whatever, don't, well, utilize that as a tool. That's a starting point.
It is.
Right? Because once again, we've been given boxes to define ourselves by. I'm man, I'm woman, I'm a doctor, I'm a chef, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a what, you know, we've got all these things, but are they you?
Yeah.
So, like, I had this massive aversion to Hare Krishna and the Hindu side of things. For some reason, just not, and I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean energetically. Like, I've been into Egypt for a long time since I was like real young, like 6-7 years old. And those sort of gods rang true. I studied Greek mythology and Latin and all these sorts of stuff, and those gods all rang true. But the Krishna and the Vishnu and all that kind of stuff, for some reason, never sat with me. And it was what I've worked out is basically that we look at the Vedic, which is what it is, the Vedic traditions, like the Bible. Like, we look at it as like the Bhagavad Gita and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're like, we Westerners especially look at them like Bibles.
Yeah.
Like the Bible is scripture and it's written
That's
like
our
this.
equation. Yep.
Whereas what those things are, they're more like Plato's writings or Galileo's writings. The gods aren't gods. They're expressions. They're actually energy forms. That's what they are. So when someone, I guess, represents themselves like, my favorite god's Krishna, That's just an expression. Like, it's kind of like the whole Bible thing. It's like, if you look at it like a Galileo or Plato writing, you've got Adam or atom, the atom, and the Eve or the electron. And you've actually got the entire mechanics of the universe in there. You know, it's like after doing some work with one of our water wizards, like he's like, it's in Genesis, boys. It's like everything's water. Everything came out of water, so everything can be turned back to water. That's how we can clean stuff. That's how we reset water. That's how we energize it.
Yeah.
You know, that's how we take the dirty shit out of it. And so they're all starting points, and we've been given them as firewalls, let's call them. You know, like, oh, well, I'm white, Christian, fucking da-da-da, so I'm supposed to be racist and fuck you, you're stupid and fucking rah-rah-rah-rah. It's sort of like, well, hang on, the way I look at a lot of unmelanated people like ourselves, you and I, Danny, is we were actually some of the...
And I'm quite melanated.
Shush. I'm coming out of winter then. I glow in the dark. But essentially, it's like we were actually some of the first peoples on this planet that were ostracized. You know, and if you look at historical reference, there has actually been tribes of white people running away from something as well. You know, the Welsh, they were ostracized, the Irish, they were fucked over, the Celts, the Picts, like these were races that thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago were getting smashed. You know, and some of the elders here in Australia, like I've had some of my white elders go, oh, well, when we first moved here, we were all very apologetic, you know, da-da-da-da-da for being white. And some of the elders were like, oh, you guys think you're bad. You should have been here 10,000 years ago and seen what those fuckers did to us. So, it's like, who did what? You know, it's like, you know, non-melanated people are autochthonous to somewhere on this planet. And we have, like, we're all First Nations. That's the other side of it. From somewhere, we're all First Nations.
Yep.
And when you look at it from that context, like I said before, what we now classify as First Nations, our spiritual elders, they're leading the way. They're now speaking up, and it's our time to too.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at it, instead of looking at it in this multi-fractional world, we go, we've got these divine humans that are crying out for their inheritance or their inheritance against something. You've got one group against one thing.
Yeah.
And the process then becomes very clear.
The problem is sometimes the process doesn't become clear. And that's where the distractions come in. Right? That's where you get the one group against one thing, and we end up with your KKK, Black Lives Matter, your pick a frickin' group marching for their specific rights when it is all about the rights. And it's about the rights of the people. And it's the rights of all the fucking people.
And then if you're going, exactly. And if you're going for one right, what about all the fucking other rights that you supposedly have?
Yep.
So what it comes down to really is freedom of choice, right?
Freedom. Just freedom.
Well, that's what it is. Freedom is choice. To have freedom means that you can have choice. And then if you make it freedom, the freedom of your choice, it's not Black Lives Matters, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. It's this one thing against that one thing.
Yep. Yep.
So I mean, it's like if you look at, it's like everyone can sit there and go, well, it's government. It's like, but if we know government are corporations, then it's corporations. It's not, you know. And then if we know that corporations are only made because of X, Y, and Z, then okay, it is the banks. And if it's not, like I say, we've gone up the tier.
Yep. We've done the
We've
pyramid.
gone up the tier. We know that the UN is.
top.
We know that the UN is something. Well, we know that the UN is something. We know that the IMF is something. We know that the reserve banks are something. So what the fuck is the point talking to the government at all? And this is like, this comes back to that civil disobedience and stuff like that. And that's where, once again, things like John's website, the Skillshare, come into full force. That's where things like Bitcoin come into. What Bitcoin is showing for me is that if you get enough backing from people, like that, you can now pay via BPay with Bitcoin. You can do all these things. Ethereum's about to audit Russia and blockchain Russia's entire resource base. It's not the thing per se, but it's what it's showing.
Yeah.
You know, like Flow Hives, they wanted, I think it was 150,000, and they got $15 million through crowd. Flow Hives, they're friends of ours here that have made
that's freaking awesome.
They got $15 million. Like if you use a crowdfunding thing, like just the showcase of it and what people have been able to achieve, if someone's out there and they actually have a phone that runs off Earth frequency and there was a platform to present that, and you had, like we've spoken about, 15 million people or whatever, and everyone chucked in $1, there's that factory that does that thing.
Yep. No, exactly. I mean, and that's one of the things, like I say, this is one of the things that we're working towards. And after you and I had that conversation, I had several people say, this so needs to be organized. Like, do this kind of thing where you start off, if you've got, you say 5,000 people, and this month, this is what, you know, put it up and say, here's some projects that are up. Which one do you guys think? Which one should we work with? Oh, this one here has really, really got us all interested. We're really, really excited about this. Okay, everyone donate $1. So the first month, maybe it's only $5,000 it could raise, but it might be enough to get this one project up and going, etc. But you bring in more people, and then maybe the next month there's 7,000 people. So now you can raise with $1 each, $7,000. And then the next month, maybe it's 10,000 people, and you build the crowdfunding. You build your crowdfunding from there. And it doesn't have to be just UnFuckers. Because you know what? Here's the thing. There's a lot of people out there who would love a phone that runs on an Earth frequency, and it doesn't utilize all the shit. And it doesn't mean that they're awake or aware. They just want that specific thing. They want, if there's someone out there who wants, you know, a greenhouse, it's an all seasons greenhouse that is totally automated and will do the watering and the lighting and everything, they don't have to be awake or aware or anything. They might just be people who really want to be able to grow their own food. Yep. And maybe it's because they've got allergies and they've got, you know, something as simple as that. They may not know anything about GMOs. They may not know anything about pesticides. They just know that, well, I've got really, really bad allergies if I buy vegetables from the store, so I got to grow my own. That's the only way I can deal with it. So they don't have to be awake anywhere. But if you have a project where all of a sudden someone has got, here's my project and I need $20,000 to go into production on a self-sustaining greenhouse that you'll be able to buy for $2,000, fully kitted out, all of a sudden your audience expands again. And maybe the next month you've got 20,000 people and it goes up. You know, it's like, and they tell 2 friends and they're so on and so on and so on. Yeah. Is this something that we absolutely can do?
Yes, totally. So Carl sent me this thing to check out, and it's a guy, I put it in the chat and I'll post it in here again. It's a YouTube video. I think it's about an hour long, maybe a bit longer even. But it's this guy called Tony Seba. And he's been doing this research on what he calls clean disruptions.
Okay, you talk about this. I got to go get my mosquito spray again. So yeah, because you and I already discussed this.
Yeah. So what these clean disruption, or what this guy Tony Seba's done, is he's actually created like some software that maps technological advances and their convergences of certain things. So one of his things was the ion battery. Now that the ion battery has, lithium ion battery, is now becoming cheaper and cheaper. You've had this convergence, and when that convergence happened, you had laptops getting smaller and iPhones being, better storage and all these different little things. I suggest it's worth a watch, because what he's showing is as people are working on these technological things, when they converge, it's the masses or the people behind it that are us that are able to actually direct the stuff, because we're the ones that are creating it and we're the ones that are using it. So instead of being marketed to, we can actually start creating our own platforms for this sort of stuff. And like I say, things like Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies and the likes are showing us, the same with crowdfunding, step by step are showing us how, when people power happens and gets behind people, the achievements that are actually made. So like the Flow Hive is a perfect example of a gentleman that was trying to make beekeeping easier, and he's from exactly the same area that I'm living in at the moment, and they put together a crowdfunding campaign, and like I say, they got $15 million, and now Flow Hives are everywhere in the world, and they're helping bee colonies, and they're helping people get involved in nature and all these different things. And it was from an idea. And an idea that was presented well. Like, this is the other side of it. We're in the age of, seeing is believing. So that's why marketing works so well. If you've got a crappy crowdfunding thing put together, it's not going to get the same outcome as a well-presented one, which is, these are all the different parts that we find ourselves having problems with, because, I'm no IT specialist, neither is D, but then we have a John. And that's where something like the Skillshare database can come in handy, where you can trade pay, you can trade skills, you can trade all these different things to achieve what we want to achieve. And like, as Dee's been saying the whole time, we have these different skill sets. It's now kind of time to recognize where your skill sets are, not what boxes you're given to represent yourself with, but what your skills are, the things that you learn and achieve from that, and we can start actually transforming and building this kind of an avenue to start administering, I guess, and working with. Facebook, perfect representation. Here's something where you guys can openly communicate. Now, if it wasn't subverted and utilized for marketing and every fucking thing else, Facebook would be perfect, because you can have real-time communication. You can sit there and you could actually work through things with people, or like what YouTube is now, you fucking put it in there and learn how to do it. Like, we have our Open Academy, we have all these other things. We just haven't organized ourselves in a fashion where it's user friendly. I keep going back to Martin Luther King. Those that love peace must learn to organize themselves as much as those that love war. And we haven't done that yet. And we haven't done that.
No, exactly. We haven't done that yet. So it's like the same thing. Those who want to get ahead want to bring these changes to, if you really want to manifest whatever it is that you want, whether it's permaculture gardens, whether it's all this, then we need to organize ourselves as well as the assholes who are disorganizing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So
again, though, that's where like-minded people come together to make it happen. You know, you got to be on the same page, wanting the same shit.
But here's the thing, though.
But
you
then
don't
what
have
do
to
you
be
define as the
all
same
on the same
shit?
page.
No.
Right?
You got to be out there and be part of the world. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep.
The one thing I learned
like
in the conversations I had this week, and actually for the last couple of weeks, because I've had some significant conversations, is that when I opened the subjects up, in a lot of ways, there was some relief on the other side because they were afraid to open those subjects up. The other person was afraid to talk about their fears, afraid to talk about, to ask the question. They don't want to, they don't want to come across and sound foolish, or they don't want to get they don't even know where to start the research, et cetera, et cetera. So they're afraid. So when someone else opens the conversation for them, you go, oh my God, yes, can we talk about this? Yes, I want to know about this. But I don't know how, I didn't know how to ask. I was embarrassed to ask, or I was afraid to ask, right? Sometimes the conversations have to start with someone, and you may get shot down. Chris, I totally hear you. You may get shot down 7 out of 8 times. And then we have a learning curve, right? We look at how did we broach the subjects? How did we come across? How did we express ourselves, right? Is there a better way I could have expressed myself so that I maybe could have found the chink in the armor, the crack there, that you may have been able to found that crack and gone, oh, okay, you're into gardening. So we're going to talk about gardening, and I'm going to, don't you think it's such a shame when all the bees are dying off? I mean, what are we going to do when all our bees die off? Yeah.
How do I compliment somebody?
Yeah, there you go. And again, we have an opportunity to learn ourselves. Learn how to, I have to reel myself in. I get way too impassioned on subjects way too fucking fast. And I know that I have to sit back and I have to be much more calm, because I get really impassioned by what I talk about, and it freaks people out. And I've literally watched it freak people out. So then I have a learning curve, right? I have a learning curve where I have to go, okay, I need to be more subtle. I have to be more calm. I have to not get angry.
I have to learn how to hold that thought.
Yeah.
Till my turn to talkers. I'm the same as you.
Oh yeah, I know, Ben, because how many of you and I had where we end up screaming at each other? And we're both not screaming at each other. We're screaming to each other. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Ben and I have had many, many tantrums together. But this is it. And then we have an opportunity to learn, because you know what? Sometimes we don't communicate. If you don't have these conversations very often with people, then you have to practice. But the only way you get better at it is to practice. Right? Okay, Ben.
Well, no, but that's just it, right? It's practice. Like, how can you, like I say, when you come from let's just say, the new definition of the earth, yeah? We'll pull it out of the world, we'll pull it out of all those things. It's like, how can you be offended by anyone else unless, like, see, now this is the other side of it, unless they're actually offending you. Like, it's like, D, you and I, we like to swear, yeah? I've gotten heaps better and you've gotten heaps better. But for me, fuck can be like, woohoo, or shit. And those words freak people out and can offend them, but they literally are my expressive words.
Yeah, same with me.
Unless I'm like, you fucking da-da-da-da-da, it's not actually directed. See, and this is that whole learning, the whole empathy, intuitive path where it's like, okay, what's mine, what's not? And when you start looking at it from that point of view, it's like, oh, okay, like you say, it's like, okay, well, how do I compliment this person? I've created a reaction, and sometimes you'll never be able to, and it doesn't mean, like, you know, it doesn't mean compliment them as in like, oh, you're looking really nice today. Compliment them, like, okay, well, I apologize, know what I meant by, or, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And it's actually learning each other's vocabulary is essentially what I mean by complimenting each other, because we all have different definitions for different words.
Exactly.
Well, sorry, we all have different definitions for the same words.
Yes. Different definitions for the same words, and sometimes we have different definitions for different words.
Can I say something?
Yep.
Cool.
I was wondering when you were going to get around to me, Danny. I'm like, okay. So, yeah, and this is one thing that bothers me. Where when I was in church, they would be like, be not as of the world, but it's like, wait a minute, if you're not in the world and you're not being a part of it, you're not really doing yourself or anyone a service, because you're not being a part or wanting to help change. Like, I can remember being in church and then like, oh, we want to take Canada for Jesus. We want to have everyone across Canada to come to Jesus. Yeah, that's a big problem. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Not in the way you're trying to, you know, get people to come to Jesus. But, and also in that matter also, it's like, in spirituality, there's like, in most major spiritualities, there's not that moving forward aspect. There's always that past aspect that everyone seems to be stuck with. So you have to have pastors coming out with, or whatever spiritual leader, coming out with some new type of concept. But it's never truly ever really shared around with other groups, and, you know, to where it moves forward. And that's my problem with spirituality, is it doesn't move forward to into the modern construct. I don't really mean to use construct, but it's the only word that really fits into what I'm trying to say. Because, yeah, it doesn't get to move forward, and it's sad, you know, because then if you're moving forward, that means you're making progress in your spiritual growth. Now, I know what the guy said, not to be spiritual, but there is a spiritual side to being human, like.
Yeah, but that's what we're saying. That's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah.
You have to be both.
Right.
We have to be both, and it's the balance of the two.
Right. And
Earl, you just muted yourself.
what I was saying before we came on is you were talking about all the cement deaths and all that, and everything's made out of cement there. And I was saying, well, you're living in bedrock.
We're living in bedrock, yeah. Welcome to the Flintstones.
Okay, I'll mute myself.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, Wild Lily.
Hi, everybody. Okay, I've been sitting here listening to this fabulous conversation, right? And I'm going to rewind a little bit to Ben, because I feel like I could actually benefit from some more of his sharing if he could elucidate me on the, and this is it, right? We have these conversations. This is how we do it. We jump in. The autochthonous part of the Caucasian that he was talking about. I just finished my second book, right? It's called Naked. And the reason I wrote it is because I feel this ancestral DNA coming through, really coming through, like it's a time to return to the first peoples, if you will, for lack of better terminology. And I haven't come across anything, it hasn't shown itself to me about autochthonous Caucasians. So that I find absolutely fascinating. And because what I know now, it was coming through, but I couldn't, you know how we get these downloads and we don't have the words. Yep. And it's just coming through the information. I mean, it floods through this temple, I got to tell you. And then finally, or some confirmation or some affirmation from an outside source. So I know that Mel has been renamed several times into several things. So we have the whole spectrum of, it started, I believe, as a cultum, and anybody, if they have something earlier than that, I'd love to hear it. So we have a cultum, and then we have space, which is, you know, the mysterious, non-mysterious dark matter. And then they've called melanin carbon. And then they've called melanin many, many things. But what I know is these first peoples, because it's come through my DNA, and if something, and it's just information, so it's very fluid, it's very open, I'm not attached to any of this, just conveying it as it comes through. And so this melanin was original to the first beings who were super, super intelligent and super, super human is what comes through this DNA. So I would love to know about autochthonous Caucasians.
Well, you need to talk to Ben about the Petaparahi. I don't ever say it right, Ben. Petaparahi.
Okay.
Oh, the Patupaiarahi. Patupaiarahi. Well, that's only one race.
No, exactly. But it's a specific example of.
Yeah. So there was at least up to 5 races in New Zealand, and what I've been told is that they were Welsh. So there is. Well, I don't even know. I don't even know whether to call them Welsh.
Back up and give a timeline on this one, because that's where it gets confusing.
Right. So in New Zealand, there's oral stories. There's the Māori oral stories, and then but there's the 12 or 13 canoes that arrived in New Zealand. Now, the Māoris only arrived in New Zealand about 700 years ago, right? And that's even by their sort of oral stuff. But when they arrived, there were beings there of non-melanated skin, fully muku, like full tattoos, red hair, and there were varying sizes of these peoples. And there's been artifacts found that are over 3,500 years old. But what I've been blessed with being connected with certain peoples, and the storylines that I'm being told now is that those original peoples in New Zealand that were there were from Wales.
Or what we now know as Wales.
Because everything's been renamed, right? Yeah.
And that's, exactly. And that's now you're going to trigger me and my higher self soon. But essentially,
great.
The storyline is quite funny. But anyway, what I've just recently been told is that they travelled there by tubes or by portals, lava tubes, from Wales to New Zealand.
Okay.
So when you play out the, like I say, like the facts, you have Wales, which was actually one of the very first original places, like the original parliaments, right? And I don't think that it was parliament as in government, if you kind of pick up my drift.
Yeah.
So essentially, they took off. They took off, and there's oral stories of melanated races hunting these lighter races and chasing them out of Egypt, and then them cruising to South America, and then, like I say, down through Rapa Nui. So the Moai, the large Easter Island statues, they were of olive-skinned people with red hair. Right?
Okay.
So
yeah, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
What I've been trying to work out, because this is the thing, is like, what is England or what is the United Kingdom? Because there's certain places where, like, you know, it was named certain things like Britain and stuff like that, but there's very, very early renditions written by monks, like fucking, I can't even remember how old these things were, but they were called the Knights of Pryden. Pryden, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And Pryden was the islands, as far as I know.
And we're talking, when you're sharing this with all of us, you're talking very ancient, right? You're talking ancient, like in first.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
You know, the only reason, you know what? I know it's, and you know what? We're all doing the best we can with all of the information that we get in downloads, and then what we've also been exposed to and floating around in the collective sphere, if you will. But this, I find it really interesting that I listen to some others like Santos Bonacci too, and he's got a really great handle on different languages, ancient astrotheology that he's resurrecting, right? And it's really beautiful because it is the divine science. It's the original. And because we're healing our cosmic wound is what we're really doing. We're all coming home. So he also, I just listened to a recent presentation and I loved it because, again, it was confirmation that that the indigenous, he just said the word black, but see, I know now that black actually means white, so that's flipped too. But he was saying that the blacks were the first here, and I have it in my book too, as far as the so-called Americas, right? Because we know that the Ka is spirit, right? Africa, Ka, everything was spirit. And that they were the Washita, and I have that in my book as well. And
the Washita?
Washita, yeah.
So there's a tribe in New Zealand called the Waitaha.
Waitaha. Notice we have all these Kas and Has and
New Zealand, remembering that New Zealand is the white man. It's Aotearoa, which is land of the long white cloud.
Oh, you know what, Ben? You need to send me some information because this would be great. Because I'm sitting down and I'm actually considering, because this book, my second book is called Naked, and it's over 400 pages because it just kept coming through. And I'm thinking of splitting it up into volumes. So I would really appreciate if you could send me some really relevant links, and I can put my email in the chat if that's okay with Don.
Yeah, that's okay with me, but you don't understand how Ben collects information. That's why I'm laughing.
Really?
Yeah.
No, it would be really great because we can only
much to be dismayed at.
See,
well, you know,
I can give you some documentaries that open some of my eyes, but see what a lot of the cool side to what I seem to be able to do by being in my harmony is everything comes to me. So I have an elder from the Waitaha. I have some elders, original elders here that share with me. So if I find stuff out, I generally go speak to people and put it into kind of like with levity. I've sat with quite a lot of elders and gone, so there's this thing that the white fella took away from us called levity, and this is what it is. And they go, oh, that's this.
Right.
Every nation has a different word for it.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Mana, prana.
Did they, may I ask you? Exactly. Everything's like Oz. May I ask too? Because everybody here probably at some point or another wanted to know anyway, but how would the ancient beings you're speaking of, that I'm so happy that you're going to provide me a couple of links with, what is their word for melanin, for this dark substance, for this, from which all life springs forth? What do they have a word for it?
What's kind of funny? Oh,
kind of funny.
I speak to the elders here in Australia, and they don't know of any white man, let's just say, and I mean like, you know, biblical man, like, you know, mankind kind of thing, not man as in male. But there's paintings here and things that depict things that are said to be older, and that the people here are actually custodians of these paintings, and these paintings are of certain things and peoples. But see, it's like when you look at the grand context of things, it's like Australia, or the landmass known as, isn't Australia, right?
Right.
The landmass known as New Zealand isn't New Zealand.
Correct.
Right? And this is where things all start playing out weirdly. And like I say, if we stick with the facts, it's like if Wales was the original parliament or original government in whatever form that was, and we'll say an energetic one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have when the colonizers started colonizing, they then, when they got to Australia, they set up New South Wales, which was the New Wales south of the original.
Mm-hmm.
Right? New South Wales was at that point in charge of New Zealand. Okay?
Still are.
So in effigy to recreate an already existing realm, all you have to do is fictionalize it in some fashion and recreate it. Exactly the same as however it was done. So you have New South Wales being created. Then you have all these other things from New South, like the states in Australia were set up from New South Wales. New Zealand was set up from New South Wales. Like these, so in effigy, they set up the new parliament or government in New South Wales, which wasn't done by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot, like possibly some of the world's oldest monuments are here. And some of those oldest monuments are said to not be created by the autochthonous being from here. Right. Does that make sense? There's things on this planet that were left here by entities or beings that are older than the beings from here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they only have story time and the paintings, etc., to recreate the story that has been passed down to them.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so much, like in this area that I'm in now, like I'm still yet to ask the couple of elders that I have to ask in this area exactly what this area was, but there were Bora Bora rings and initiation sites all the way through this valley that have all been bulldozed. You know,
right.
So,
and now is that, when you speak of this, Ben, this is Caucasian or melanin?
Here, melanin.
Okay.
But like I've just said, at the same time, there are these other things like paintings and glyphs and stuff like that were said to be here prior to.
Yes.
And that the people here are custodians to that.
That's the links I would like to have. Can you do that?
there are some, but we're still chasing certain things.
I see.
But when you venture into the Waitaha side of things, there is actually a book that was orally handed down to a certain man. That I'll send you some links for some documentaries that are on a lot of this stuff, and they're showing how the New Zealand government has been sequestering certain things, because there's giant skeletons in New Zealand, some found only like 2 years ago when they were excavating roads, like 7 to I think 9 foot tall skeletons. 3 of them were found. And they've been anything to do with them has been sequestered till 2060.
Okay, all right.
2060.
That's cool.
And they have an excuse for this?
Well,
because I mean, you told me about this, and I'm like, but what's the excuse?
Well, see, this is where it gets weirder, because apparently in New Zealand up until 1975, all of these things were spoken of. So the Patupaerahe and all that sort of stuff were spoken as beings. Like, these dudes were here. This is the knowledge that they shared with us. This is what they taught us. This is what they showed us. They'd already mapped the entire country out, like to the point that when white man came to survey New Zealand, they put their survey markers on top of survey markers that were already there. Like, these people carved mountains out so that they could get line of sight to certain islands, right? And then in 1976, it all changed and they become fairies and mystical beings and entities and stuff. So there's some tribes that tell certain things, and there's other tribes that don't, and there's other tribes that want to keep things secret because, well, that's just the law, L-O-R-E. But it's the same with what's happening, as far as I'm concerned, with all First Nations across the planet, which is you have some that want to that are determined to keep to the old ways, which is what's needed, and then you've got the sellouts.
Well, and the whole thing with the sellouts, I mean, that's unfortunately that's where it goes across even in North America as well. And that's I've got a good friend who's Six Nations, who's Mohawk, and he talks about that all the time because he was raised in the old way. And he said, like, him and his brother went to a powwow, and I can't remember what direction they were dancing in one direction, and he looked at them all and was like, "What are you doing? Why are you dancing in that direction? You should be going in the other direction. Why are you going?" Well, we've been told that that's how we have to do it. And when he went and tracked it down, and it basically came back to like one chief who was like, no, all the dances are going to be done this way. And when they asked why, I was like, well, that's what we were told to do. And my friend who's Mohawk was like, basically, you're undoing the world. Like, you're dancing in the direction that undoes the world instead of dancing in the direction to enliven the world. And it was like this moment of shock for him of just like, what are they doing? And when he started like pulling the strings apart, you started to realize that a lot of the teachings had been very deliberately altered in ways that were fundamental. And that was the shock to him. Is like even something as like the dance of the powwow and what direction it was going in, and the fact of like, no, that's the complete wrong direction.
And see, that's so beautiful what you just shared too, Donnie, because as we're returning home, which is really to center to our core, we have so much information to sift through. So many things have been chronologically totally screwed up, even though there is only now. I know Ben was talking about now, but there is only now, and there's just now. But things have been so messed up, terminology, chronologically. And so I feel we really have to trust what comes through. And that's why, like you said, Donnie, earlier, when we bring our discussions, I've been getting the download, and I put it in my book too, that we need to share right now, because the most pertinent information we're getting is through this vehicle. At least I know it's been that way for me. And then to share what comes through with another being as they share in turn. And then when you're sharing, I'm going to tell you, when you start talking, there's something that happens with my DNA.
But and that's the thing. All of a sudden, someone it's a word, a sentence, an image comes through, and then it triggers the next person, and they bring their piece through, and that's how we put the puzzle pieces together.
Yes, and that's why we're all valuable, because we all have something to contribute, whether we believe it or not.
Yeah.
So Lily.
Yes.
In all the stuff that you've done, where did like the Native American Indians and whatnot, when they put up their teepees or their shelters, where did they face their doors?
I haven't gotten into that. That's not come through.
Okay, so
I haven't been prompted for that. Is there's a reason why you ask?
Well, essentially, yeah, because when I find myself in a flux. There are certain things like we talk about Egypt, and we talk about the fact that Egypt is quite possibly a focal point on a ley line, so an energy grid that's been mapped out via those structures. But there's research that I've done that I've actually found that there's a fourth pyramid that was there. So what has that done to that? The reason I say these sorts of things is because then that would change the pyramids from being Orion's belt to something else. Possibly now, from what I know from the origines here, possibly the Southern Cross, right? There's 4 stars, da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason I bring this up is because most First Nations that I've met, all their dwellings used to open to the east so that they could beckon or hail the rising sun. The reason the doors were low is because then you bowed down before you came out, so that you were humble before you came out, right? They all faced to the east.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why have we been given north as a directional point if all First Nations used to honor the east and then honor the west?
Right.
But then here in Australia, what I've just recently found out is astrologically is that the Southern Cross is a very, very, very important star constellation, like very, very important, to the point where some of the tribes here say that that's where water came from. All right? So when our directions are so skewiffed and astrology. So I love Santos as well, his earlier stuff, especially. But the when you start talking about the zodiac, there's 13 zodiacs, not 12, and they all move 7 degrees every year. So as far as any kind of celestial structure in astrology, those things there are actually only the forefront. And when you start getting into alchemy, it's the stuff that's just behind those symbols are actually distractions for. So it's wading through all those bits and pieces.
Yes.
And that's the other side of it. It's like, what would the study of levity do? What would the lifting of the declaration against the study of levity do? We don't know. If that black pyramid was put back in that space in Egypt, would that maybe fucking alter the energy grids again?
Right, because what we're really dealing with, this thing you're saying is behind everything. I termed it in my book, I didn't have the terminology until 2 days ago, which is dielectric, the black substance, dielectric. That's what it's called.
And
That's
some interesting shit about that to go into. That is another one that's really interesting.
Right, because see, when we get to that black, right, and how black really means white, because, you know, blanc, bleach, white, pale of color. All right, but let's use black like I did in my book. So we have the black. Oh, shit, what was I going to say? You see, I just got a gush of information that came through and it all just calculated.
Yeah.
I got it. No, I got it. Okay, so this blackness, Egypt, the former name is Kem.
Or
Okay? Kemet. Right,
Yeah.
which you probably know, everyone probably knows. All right, so Kem means dark, black, right? Dark, right? Then before that, you have Kash, which is Kush, which is ancient Ethiopia, which also, it's not really Kush, it's Kash, as in Akashic records. So again, we're pointing to first, primitive, primordial, that kind of essence. That's why I was so, something inside went ping when you said autochthonous Caucasian. I went ping, something inside. I said, so
the other trip there too, right, is like you say about Egypt, the land of Kem. So it's like the occultists like to turn that into, or the conspiracy occultists like to turn that into, it was the land of black magic. Yes,
but not magic in that hocus pocus, but no.
But when I started doing my research into agriculture, I got this other picture. Now, Egypt was sort of that Mesopotamian region, you know, it was all fucking palm trees and lush and all the rest of it. Look at it now. So what does it take to sustain something that is so pristine like that? You know, that was portrayed like that. And then from there, we found some study into Peru. And in Peru, they have some soil there, or humic matter, called terra prieta, which means black soil.
Black soil, yes.
The land of, like, you know, the black land. I was like, oh, when you have healthy soil or humic matter, it's dark. It's like chocolate, right?
Yes.
And then what I actually started looking at is what did these people have available in abundance that we would probably use to grow fucking kick-ass food? And they had things like water hyacinth, and I believe water hyacinth is from another planet. But anyway, that's my own theory. But they had all these different things that they had that they use to make amazing agriculture. So I actually started looking at things a little bit differently as well. And like, believe you me, turning organic matter, a mixture of organic matter, into black soil is alchemy.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Alchemy.
And see, that word chem is right in the word, isn't it? Alchemy.
Yeah,
chem. It's right in there.
Exactly.
It's in our chemistry, right? Because what is chemistry studying? Carbon. What is carbon? Melanin. Right. So it all comes back around.
And what is carbon?
Exactly. Carbon is life. It's what I get.
Carbon is the storage for energy of life.
Yes, carbon is the Akash. It is the Akash. The storage you're speaking of. I'm using different words, but yes.
So, and well, no, what we're doing is we're dialoguing here. So what you're able to do is it ticks it off. See, I've just started studying transmutation, right? And we've spoken about the Silicial age, you know, the Silicon age.
Yes.
The silicon trees and stuff like that. The first page I turned to in this book shows that carbon, if you can break silica down into carbon and oxygen through transmutation, right?
Yes.
Which then in turn means that you can rejoin carbon and oxygen under pressure and time and heat. All you need is an atmosphere and a heat source, like a light bulb or a sun. and those things there can actually transmute back into silica. So why would someone be fighting against carbon and oxygen or the abundance of CO2 in our atmosphere?
Exactly.
See, and when you start adding all these things up, it's like it all can start making sense. Now, I don't know whether I'm directing these things into like being able to fit, but this is the way it fits. And when we're dealing with facts, it's like, well, this is a theory. However, this can happen.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So
Yes.
all it takes is we could have had a silicon body and something changed and split it into carbon and oxygen body, right?
Right, because silica is the building block of life. So if it's an element like that, I mean, it's not irrelevant. And it's probably a high conductor of frequency.
Totally
it probably conducts dielectricity extremely well.
Does.
Yeah.
Carbon does it even better, just straight up carbon.
Yeah. This is fascinating because because there's a lot of words that a lot of words. And what I see, the beautiful thing about this, well, it's many beautiful things about this whole conversation and the show, Donnie. But right now, the beauty is that I, as an individuated expression of this etheric substance, if you will, can only share my research. My research is really coming from within. So when I get asked questions, I can only really give you what's coming through here. Like I said, I get confirmations from the outside constantly.
Yeah.
And then I'm going, oh my God, that's what came through. That's what came through.
Yep.
So I may not be able
Ask
to
and you shall receive.
Questions, you know?
That is
that again,
manifestation.
Ask and you shall receive. Isn't that what they say?
Yep.
You ask for the confirmations and you receive the confirmations.
The confirmation is the manifestation of what you were trying to confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's just really
that's how it happens, right? But we have this thing called manifestation, so we label it that, whereas that's part of that empathic intuition. That's what it is. You put the stuff together so that it can present itself to become fact.
Right. And what is fact? Fact is information. And fact can change when you introduce additional information.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's why I'm not attached to any of this. Not attached to anything.
Well,
why would I?
It was the moment you become attached to it, you close yourself off to the new information that comes in, which is why it's so vitally important that we put aside our bias, recognize our bias, and put it aside so that when new information comes in, we can actually integrate it into what was already come through.
Exactly. You know, on this melanin kick, since we're just here now, I might as well mention it. I referenced a couple of beings that did confirm the downloads I was getting. And one of them, I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is, he's a holistic doctor. He's a naturopath. He runs his own university. Reverend Phil Valentine.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Big tip on melanin. Yeah. So I'll just share that with everybody in case this conversation stimulated something, because we all are composed of carbon as well. So it must have hit something somewhere. Yeah. Reverend Phil Valentine is Dr. Reverend Phil Valentine, and he runs the Commission University. So he's great on melanin, and he's, you know what? He shows up as he is. That's it. And so there's a lot of colorful language, you know, like we have here, you know, very natural, but very professional, very intuitive, very psychic, very professional all the way around. So Reverend Phil Valentine, if anyone wants to look into melanin. And yeah, it's really great. And then the funny thing is, once you go on YouTube, of course, and you click his, you do his name, you're going to come up with Dr. Baba Ashra Kwesi. You're going to come up with so many different beings that are actually melanated beings talking about this stuff because it is home for them. So they're speaking from direct experience and study and research. So it's really fascinating. And thank you both so much for this conversation.
Well, you know what? Melanin is a really interesting thing.
Going home.
Sorry, hon, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
No, it's okay. I'm just finishing with, I feel like this conversation is so necessary right now because it's a big part of returning home.
Oh, absolutely. Melanin is an interesting thing because I've been researching melanin, i.e. the actual physical chemical in the body, on and off for about 10 years. And every time you go a little step deeper, you find out a little bit more and how it interacts.
Yeah.
And melanin and neuromelanin, because you have melanin in your brain, that until recently, they had no fucking clue what it did. Literally no clue what it did. And I actually found a paper. I've only ever managed to get the abstract of this paper. One of these days, I'm going to send away the $25 to actually get a physical copy of this one guy's paper he wrote in the 80s. It talks about the neuromelanin and makes some, at the time was conceived completely out there, radical. But now we're sitting there going, yeah, given everything else that we know, I think this guy was probably right fucking on the money. Like, bing.
Well, what else makes melanin? Like high production melanin?
I don't know. What?
Mushrooms.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, okay. So, you know.
Whoa.
Okay. So, this is the thing. So, when you talk about, for example, the mushrooms, and Ben and I have had this conversation before, we've learned, it's been learned, the fact that mushrooms communicate. And they are like the communication sources through the ground that can connect forests thousands of miles apart. Right? Okay. It is like the neural network of the Earth.
It's the mitochondrial.
The mitochondrial, okay, now this is important. The mitochondrial neural network of the Earth that attaches the Earth to the plants, to the trees, to everything. And it all communicates through these vast network of basically mushrooms. Okay? And the melanin. Your body, the melanin does the same thing in your body. Your melanin on the surface, okay, is a conductive pathway that directly links from your skin, which is your secondary endocrine system, directly up into your endocrine, to your pineal gland. It directly connects all of these pieces together. Okay, what is the one that, it's funny, I just put an article out about the fact of new studies verifying yet again that sun cream and suntan lotions are the worst thing and cause cancer.
Oh, horrible.
Ben burst. Okay, Ben, go ahead, say it.
Melanin is our photosynthesis.
Exactly. It's exactly it. Melanin is the human form of photosynthesis. Okay, so what is the thing they've been yelling at us since the 70s? Oh, don't go out in the sun. So if you go out in the sun, you're going to get skin cancer. So rub this cream all over your body that will block the sun's rays from interacting with your skin. Oh, and will give you cancer. And will cause you to be vitamin D deficient, which will give you more cancer.
Here's something to study.
Yeah.
Melanin and the endocannabinoid system.
Yes. Okay, and that's another piece of it. And the melanin and the endocannabinoid system directly fucking linked. Okay, all of these pieces, and you start, it's like we say, we pull the threads apart, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the melanin in the skin, so for example, you get the whole thing about the sun and the skin cancer and the whole drama. Well, if you're trying to shut down people, shut them down from being able to intuit, to be able to be empathic, to shut down their abilities. So you fluoridate water to calcify the pineal gland, and you slather them with toxic compounds
which kills their mitochondrial.
It kills the mitochondrial pathways.
Yes.
People don't realize it. So, for example, I tan very, very easily because I lay in the sun all the time, and I have done since I was a child. Like, I'm talking when I was 4 years old, I would open my bedroom window to let the sun in and lie on the floor in the sun. My mother nuts. If you don't lay in the sun, let's say, for example, you fell for the whole bullshit and you never went out in the sun for 5 years, and then you go out into the sun, you're not going to get a tan right away because your melanin is literally dying off.
Oh, Wild Lily, here's one for you. Unless you're fucking English.
Unless you're English.
Why do English people go browner? There's one for you. How does English people's or Europeans people's melanin activate so quickly? Like, they get off the plane and they're brown. Not every single one of them.
Oh, not
but
here
the
they don't, sweetie pie. Oh, not
really
here
not
they don't.
Don't they?
Well,
the majority, serious.
Oh,
majority.
No. Yeah, but Clive, you've got years. You don't count. You don't count, Clive. Sorry, you've been a mogul for years. But this is the thing. So, like, for example, I've had people who are, say, grown up and they were very self-conscious of their body, so they only ever wore a one-piece bathing suit. And then they start to get, like a little braver, and they buy a two-piece bathing suit, and they're trying to tan their stomach. And they're like, how come my stomach won't tan? I'm like, because you have no melanin there. Your stomach has never seen the sun. So you have to build it up. You literally have to regrow, if you will, that mitochondrial connections back in. Now, we see it as a reflection in the color that your skin turns in the sun. But it all comes down to this communication network. And this communication network is so incredibly vital. And that's why I say pieces. And you look at things like the simple bullshit propaganda about sunscreen. And when you start to realize the deeper ramifications of it, it's shocking. Like, just absolutely shocking.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Donnie. And I just want to make this clear, crystal clear. I know that we go around, and even in my book, I said melanoid and non-melanoid beings. But if you didn't have melanin beyond the earth, you wouldn't be here. Because
we can't hear you, Lily. You can't be on the earth.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay. The melanin that you have on your skin, there's the neuromelanin in the pineal. Now, we say melanoid and non-melanoid beings, but that's faulty in a way because
they don't want you saying this.
Every time you try to say that, Lily, you go. Every time you try and get that sentence out, try again.
I will, because this must be really important. There we go. Okay, so, wow, you know what? There's bars. Okay, the paler skin has pheomelanin. Darker skin has eumelanin. Okay, so what happens with this melanin, as you're talking about it as mitochondria and messengers, is the eumelanin can conduct a higher frequency. That's what it does, as far as in the communication and the messaging. But everybody, I just didn't want anyone to be under the impression that not everyone has melanin except darker skin. That's not true. Lighter skin has pheomelanin and darker skin has eumelanin. And it's just a matter of frequency, which is why most of the eumelanin beings can stay out in the sun longer, have different rhythms to their dances. It's a whole different branch of melanin, if you will, because of the frequency. But that's
So-
all.
So now, Wild Lily,
Yes.
now put that into the context of in the context of balance.
Yes.
Yep.
So you have eumelanin, and what was the other one? Sorry,
Pheomelanin.
pheomelanin. And you have two dances going on at either ends of the planet.
In the balance point.
So we, the non-melanated, danced one direction, and the melanated danced the other. So we were the balance of the planet. When
That makes
the
perfect
origin-
sense.
when
That
the
makes perfect
originals
sense.
had their corroborees here, we had ours up there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it looks like they chased, like, the way that I kind of look at it, or my theory, is essentially that Australia has always been here. Always.
That is so wild that you're saying that. I'm not just saying
And-
this. I
and-
feel like
And the-
America has always been here.
Except
That's
I
wild
can,
you say that.
I can also show through oral history where the Native American Indians came from. The same now that we can show where the Hawaiians came from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is the thing is their oral traditions are maps of where they've come from.
Yes.
So the Native American Indian types, First Nations of the Northern Americas, there is reason to put forward that they migrated from South America, and their oral traditions and stories fit like completely. The same as the Alaskans and the Hawaiian stories fit completely. And not just like, oh, we came from there to here, like the stories, the names of the chiefs, or even the gods. So the dude that set up or first inhabited Hawaii was a chief from Alaska. And the god that the Hawaiians have, or the high, their high authority, the name is the name of the chief that left Alaska.
See, and that makes so much sense to me only because of the game that they've played with names. None of these places were these names.
Exactly.
So another one that we've been told is, I think, and I won't quote, but I think it was the Hopi. And a lot of their oral traditions from the floods and everything coincide with the Peruvian stories of the floods and stuff. And it was at the same time that a great mountain range fell that was the divide between North America and South America. And all the glaciers from those mountains fell. And those storylines match. It's the same with the Phoenicians match with certain tribes, and the Mayans that match with how Rapa Nui or Easter Island was set up, and then how a certain Ngā Tūhoi, I think it is, landed in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's always been about balance.
Absolutely.
See, as a white person or a white man, I've always felt injustice because I've never identified as what that Western colonial kind of thing is. That, I have no, I'm not like New Zealand, fucking this, that, the other. I'm like, I'm just a dude, and this stuff actually holds true, and I've tried it and I've done it and it works. And
remember, Ben, Remember this, because I'm actually on the North American continent. So remember this, that view of that Caucasian, that was indoctrinated through the whole miseducational system, that whole thing. And those of us that are open, if you will, or that something, when we hear it, it rings bullshit, so we just don't go along with it. So now what I feel, or seems to be a lot of people realizing here on the North America, I don't even know why it's called North America. That doesn't even make any freaking sense. But anyway, on America.
North of the America.
Yeah, whatever they say. Yeah, okay. But, you know, but anyway, they're realizing, as I speak in dialogue with people, they're realizing that even the historians, that they're centralizing it on just that white, they're associating with just the colonialism and the powers that be not behind that force of colonialism.
Oh, fuck. If see, the First Nation.
Deep, and that's very deep. And, you know.
Fuck yeah. Totally. Because my thing is like, what we classify as First Nations right now, they are our closest connection.
Absolutely.
They are our closest connection, right? And there's stuff in there that is absolutely and utterly fundamental. Like it is the crux of our matter, is that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. That's what I feel like as I listen to you, I feel like it's what I was saying to Donnie earlier. Like, this just seems, when I was writing this book, I was like, Spirit, why? And why 450 pages just to say, you know, why all this information is coming through? And I feel that this return, because we're whole beings. It's not a pot over there and a pot. It's what is, actually Santos calls it syncretism. I've been calling it whole for years now. Whole. And people say holy, and I'm like, yeah, put a W in front of that, please. You know? Yeah. And so, yeah, so we're whole beings, and this information that we're discussing, Donnie, and thank you for, like, you know, providing this platform for this, because I'm ready to do my own radio show too, because we need to talk about this stuff, you know? And it's just great because this way we can just drop all the layers, drop all the stories, drop all the misconceptions, and just get down to what's essential so we can start remembering. I don't really feel like it's a learning. I feel like it's a remembering of what we really are. What we really are, like what we are, freaking fascinating, incredible, like beyond. We teleport, we time travel, and you know how I know we time travel? Because in the mind, I can think of the past, I can go there, I can think of the future, I can go there, and the future is only the past anyway. Guess why? Because I already thought about it. So it's like we're so phenomenal. We're just so phenomenal. And so this is, I feel like, yeah, I got to start a radio show too, because there's too much good stuff. No, I'm really in the process.
Instead of writing your book, you should just speak it.
Yeah, well, see, Donnie, thank you, because the book is already done, right? So now I'm like opening the bookstore and I'm doing all that. I don't know how to market to save whatever, but I will try. I'm open to trying, you know, because I'm just on the creative tip and the download tip. But we'll see what happens with it. But this is just so great to have this platform where we can come together like this. And I know Ben is just
choking to death at the moment.
Yeah. But I just want to say thank you. So I'm actually going. That was so excellent. I'm going to mute, but I can't promise you that you Ben won't say something, and I'll just, you know, be ready to speak again. But thank you so much, guys.
Oh, you're very welcome, hon. Yeah, well, we're 35 minutes past when the show was supposed to have ended, and It's 1:30 in the morning for me. Clive and I are fading fast. Let's see. Yeah, Brianna's already gone. It's like the European contingency is dropping out really, really quick now. You know what? This has been a fantastic conversation, and this is kind of going to be almost like the base conversation for Common Unity. And I wanted to kind of launch Common Unity tonight, except that yeah, I couldn't get the artwork together or the video and the intro and all that stuff. But this is what the Common Unity is going to be all about, is these kind of conversations, not just the meat and potatoes of community, but the literally the deeper conversations as well. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be good. And I'll try and get this video created.
This was really bonding tonight, Danny. Thank you. It was
excellent. You're welcome, sweetie pie.
And Ben, thank you, darling, for coming on. God, I love when Ben shows up. He's amazing.
I want to say thank you too. I never got to talk. You know, Danny, I like to talk. Ben, thank you. I'm a Native woman, and I learn. I walk my talk, right? I have the teachings. I'm getting the teachings always, and you were right on point with a lot of things. And I'd really like to talk to you sometime. You know, yep. I really do, because it's really interesting to merge our teachings together.
Yeah, well, Ben's around. He's in the UnFuckers group occasionally when he's got time.
Okay, cool.
I'll be setting up a show very soon that I've been talking to Dee about, that I've got to talk to John about as well. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. I'm from the Micmac tribe, so you know we're on the east coast of Canada. Danny knows us.
One of my best friends was Micmac.
Yeah.
Yep. Growing up. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Danny. This was an awesome show.
Oh, you're very welcome, love. I'm going to close the show off and go tuck myself into bed, throw my head at a pillow, and hope I don't miss.
Is Wild Lily on Face Crack?
Yeah, you know what? I stood unmuted because I wanted to say, Ben, I just sent you my email private, okay?
Yeah.
I just learned how to do it.
Oh, yeah, sweet. That's okay. I've just learned how to read it.
Thank you again, Donnie.
Oh, you're very welcome, hon.
And yes, I am on Face Crack, but I don't go on, so message me.
we got to start utilizing RTS Earth, folks. We really, really do got to start utilizing RTS Earth. It was created for a purpose, and the purpose is becoming very clear now.
I preach that every week, Danny.
Yeah. Okay, guys, it has been an awesome conversation, and I will talk to you guys all very soon, and we'll see you on Sunday night for sure for Transpicuous Views. Bye, guys.
Kakite.
Bye.
That's one small step for man.